We have Lori Toye with us, and as a young mother and farm wife, Lori led a conventional life in the Northwest and was totally unprepared and surprised when spiritual teachers appeared and chose her to deliver the message of earth changes and the coming new times. That was more than 20 years ago, and since then, Lori has led this movement and published the first Earth Changes map of the United States. More importantly, her prophetic wisdom and insight has explored the link between these drastic changes and human consciousness. Her life is now devoted to delivering the message she has been entrusted with. Her new book, Sisters of the Flame, is the second in a trilogy, which began with A Teacher Appears, which also awesome book. Sisters continues the story of Lori's personal life and her spiritual awakening fostered by her trance sessions with master teachers, and it contains important messages and lessons for us all. It is sent with the love and wisdom available to all of us from the beings that guide and watch over us. Welcome to the Hundredth Monkey Radio, Lori. What a pleasure to have you back.
A pleasure to be on your show again. Hi, Tom. Hi, Ramon.
Oh, welcome back. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, okay. Well, let's, Lori, first off, for the listeners may not be familiar with you and the experiences that brought you to where you are right now, if you would give us a nutshell version to kind of catch everybody up to speed.
Yeah, of course, on the last time I was on your show, I talked about sort of the genesis of my work, which was when I was very young, 22 years old, and was exposed to the Ascended Master teachings, and then later on began to have a series of dreams where I was shown the I'm America map, which was one of the first Earth Changes maps to ever be published. Let's fast forward a little bit. And in this book, which is, of course, based on true events and autobiography in nature, but this is, I'm age 33 years old, and I've published the map and basically sacrificed quite a bit to even get to this point. Many things had changed for me. I think it was necessary. It had to change in order to recalibrate my level of consciousness so that I was able to share the information. But the partner that I had worked so closely with in all the trance sessions, who had been there in my beginning stages of when I opened up to become a trance medium channel, just sort of imploded, couldn't stay with the work. This happens in this type of spiritual work.
Right.
It's just, so expansive for people. They have to just take a break from it. And he couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle any of the pressures. So it was the end of our relationship, which was very painful and emotional for me, of course, at that time. And I didn't really know what I was to do, if I was to continue with the work, or, should I just, fulfill orders for the map and then call it a day. I really had a lot of uncertainty. Well, thank God I met a woman by the name of Takala. She became a wonderful friend, teacher, and spiritual mentor. She was a medicine woman, and I had gone to visit her, and I kind of shared my story with her, what was happening, and she just said, no, you have to continue with this work. And she was also a tarot reader. And all throughout the book, I've woven the stories of when she reads tarot for me, alongside giving me guidance. And she just said, you need to continue with your work. And she would always point her finger up to the heavens and say, they have chosen you to do this, and now, you must deliver. And so what she did, which was so remarkable at that time, is she kind of opened up her home to me and anyone who would come at that time. This was, early 90s, and kind of a conservative area in the Pacific Northwest. And word of mouth just got out there, and all these women started showing up at her kitchen table for these nighttime sessions where I would go into trance. And these women would ask these amazing questions of the master teachers, everything from collective cooperation, unity consciousness, the one, to UFOs, Bigfoot, Christ and Antichrist. And so it really had a vast range of questions, and therefore Sisters of the Flame reflects this, because this is my story, my journey, working with these remarkable women.
Absolutely fantastic. You know, what started out with your work, it seems to be, was more looking at the prophetic end of things. You know, what are things going to look at? How are things going to unfold here on the planet? You know, what's down the road for us? I know you covered some of that in the questions and answers to the masters in the first book, but it was primarily on your own journey and your own development there. In this second book, do we go into more of what's in the pipes for humanity in the next few years?
They talk a lot about just us individually. What will happen to us during the changes? Of course, now we are in the time of change. We're experiencing the earth changes, of course, now with polar vortex and climate change. And I think that now we are all at this point where we just need to accept the fact that change is here, and it's part of our life now, and it's just not going to be the way that it used to be. But this is, you know, of course, some 20 years ago, and we were very unprepared for what this meant for us as human beings. And the main thing that they talked about were in this book, of course, you know, New World Atlas series has all the prophecies of the geophysical changes, but the changes with us are really amazing. And indeed, we're these spiritual beings having human experiences, but it seems as though we enter into what is known as an ascension process, where we begin to transmute the lower energies and move into a higher energy. They talk about that the earth is awakening right now alongside us to serve as a great light. And this also includes massive changes in our energy systems. You were talking about, you know, everyone feeling energy this last week, which I could talk about later because I have some ideas of perhaps why. And changes to our light fields, changes that will indeed also happen to our DNA structure. The master teachers call that the cellular awakening. And this book covers the cellular awakening in depth. And then in my other book, Points of Perception, they really get into cellular awakening because it's not only a spiritual awakening, it's also this awakening to an ascension process that inevitably will change us physically. So allegedly it changes our DNA. And it is based upon the opening up of emotion. And what they mean by that is to move us out of our heads, because we're always intellectualizing everything. So this book really becomes sort of a statement about the feminine, because we've got to open to our feminine side, and we do that through opening to the emotional aspect of ourselves. To them, when they look at our experience as humans, they see emotion as one of the greatest opportunities for us. Because through our ability to sense, to feel, to touch, to smell, to have that sensate experience of the earth, and then couple that with that range of emotion, human emotion, that they explain is so vital, moves us out of our intellect and down into our heart. And it is from there that we begin to grow and expand. And that's what they call the genesis of the cellular awakening.
Yeah, that physiological change that, you know, I've sensed that we're, you know, definitely in the process of going through. I mean, I see people all the time that are talking about, you know, boy, I sleep less, I eat less, you know, I feel different. You know, and I'm guessing that these are some of those changes that you're talking about, right?
They are, and they talk about that in the book itself. They talk about ideas about diet. They say to eat a lot of raw food because it has more vital energy. They say as we move through cellular awakening, our bodies will take on more and more light. This amazing, what they call the golden ray, or this light that streams from the galactic center. which is really designed, to awaken us to this higher aspect of us.
Right.
And then they talk about different sounds and how sound frequencies then relate to different chakras. And then also those sounds then will calibrate a different type of light within us. And so then each of the chakras then vibrate at a different light spectrum. So it's so fascinating to be introduced to this just a step at a time. They also said that the planet itself is a structure with the cellular level of mankind, so they interrelate. And since man's body is made of earth, it contains the same genetic coding. And so inevitably what they're saying is that as the earth goes through these amazing changes, so does our human body. So they work in tandem. It's, microcosm, macrocosm.
Is that as above, so below thing, right?
Yeah. But the DNA part is what is so fascinating. They say that the DNA calibrates cellular memory, which relates to the experience and realization of the innate Godhead. But it's really important, again, to not forget emotion. They call it the emotion because it assists the cellular awakening through the whole idea of freedom, what they call free movement, free flowing, and the free motion of energy. So what they're talking about is to work hard to not get so stuck. It's almost indicative that we as a race are really stuck, and that they're working at every level possible to move us to the next step, to this very important, vital next step.
Right.
And I think that's probably the spiritual reason behind the great changes, the earth changes. As drastic and really cataclysmic as they are, they're also designed to usher in a new time and a new age on the earth.
So many people they have throughout the years, or at least the last, 10, 20 years, they talked about us transforming into that light being, the being of light. And what I kind of, I have a feeling that that people get a big misconception out of those words of what that means and what that looks like. They see this, when you hear those words, they see this glowing figure, like this Oscar statue, the glowing being that has no features and stuff. But I kind of see it a little bit differently, and I'm just curious if this is in alignment with what you've learned and what you've received. It's that it's not so much an external exhibition of light, the light that's flowing out of you in that type of visible spectrum, but it's more that the body is filled more with that light, with that energy that is transmitted through what we perceive as the light beams or light.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think more than anything, it's about our acceptance of that light. We are that light, therefore we accept that light. And I think sometimes it's very difficult because we come from, belief systems in the past that really have restrained the idea that we are divine, that divinity is within us. And then to recognize that is huge, to recognize our own divinity. And then not only that, then to realize that every human being carries that potentiality, that innate Godhead is in with every single person, and that potential is there for every single person. That's very profound when you begin to understand that. But the reality is that everyone is at a different level in realizing and understanding their light and working with their light. That therefore we go all the way, from people who are just baby souls who've, they've just arrived, and then we have, these avatars and adepts who are here at this time to help us along.
Right.
But the new children, I think, are really exciting because I think that they're going to add a lot to the mix.
Yeah. I just had a niece here in December. She was born on December 21st, solstice at 11:11 a.m.
Oh my gosh, probably one of the new kids.
I know she is. I mean, I knew it from when she first got pregnant, but I felt that. But just the synchronicity of her being born on solstice at that time, just like, wow, here's your sign, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we're coming up into a period astrologically. I'm a Vedic astrologer also by practice, and starting around the end of June, we've got Jupiter moving into its sign, now this is sidereal, into its sign of exaltation. And simultaneously we'll have Saturn in its sign of exaltation. Well, those are known as the two, greater planets, the larger planets. They don't use the outer planets in Vedic astrology. But anyway, what this means is when that moves into their signs at their best placement, this hasn't happened for 60 years. This is the first time we'll have that energy on Earth in 60 years. So when you're talking about things being kinetic, I think it's probably in preparation for that. Right now, astrologically, Saturn is still in its sign of exaltation, but it's been conjunct the Moon's North Node, and so that's known as Rahu. That causes a lot of problems. Now, early on when it was closer in conjunction, it was really causing a lot of issue, a lot of Earth changes. But now they're separating, but they're still conjunct, technically. So that's still causing a lot of problems for people. And when the nodes move, then we'll be out of that problem.
Right, and so is that kind of what you were talking about earlier when I mentioned the energetic thing that I've been experiencing with people?
Yeah, and Mars is in a funny position too. Mars is in the sign of Virgo. It doesn't do too well there. So, you always want to look at those malefic influences. To me, too, when I look at them, they are the 7 rays of light and sound. All of this esoteric information will kind of translate over, into Ascended Master teaching, because I think sort of the root of Ascended Master teaching is it's Hinduism.
Right.
And it's got some Taoism in it, and it's got some, mystic Christianity in it as well. But there's a lot of Hinduism, and the 7 rays of light and sound, getting back to those, are very seminal in all this work, because they're, when you understand them and you begin to wrap your head around that, then you really begin, you're able to cross over into a whole different language. And for instance, Sisters of the Flame is really about the pink ray, and the pink ray is archetypically identified with Divine Mother and love and nurturing. So it's the feminine nature that's within all of us.
Ramon, you got something there, buddy?
Yeah, sorry, I had to take a moment to unlock my mic. With everything that's going on and the different, have you been getting people having lots of very strange experiences, like being guided to different dimensions in their out-of-body experience or dream experience?
Well, I'm in touch with a lot of different people, and it seems like it's varying a lot. A lot of them feel the energy of this awakening, again, a new level. I think spiritual awakening is something that has many levels to it. But in terms of dream space, that's interesting you should bring that up, because I've noticed lately for myself personally, really profound deep dream space. And I wasn't aware that it could be possibly something that is collective, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think that the spiritual planes are, the masters talk about the thinning of the veil. And what they mean by that is that as we develop ourselves, that is, eyes to see, ears to hear, our ability to vibrate to the fourth dimension, we're much more able to access that next plane, that next reality. So when we sleep, it's just easier, much easier for us to have more vivid experience and lucid dreaming and really profound visions, if you will.
Ramon, are you talking with your mic muted?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, because for myself, I feel like they've been ramping up and getting stranger and almost more realistic with the experiences.
What type of experiences are you having when you dream?
Well, there was one I had not last night, the night before, where it's morning time for me, so where I felt like I was taken to Mars, but it was different. It was like I was in a dream, and then in the dream, I went into a trance state, and then was guided to Mars, and then in that state, I was brought back into the dream state, then brought back into this reality.
Kind of like a dream within a dream.
Yeah, but he saw Mars was big, just gorgeous cities, and describe what you said about the cities, Ramon.
Well, I didn't see the whole city. What I saw was like I was taken to a university, and what was key in the beginning was when I was shown this university, I was able to read it. Normally, as most of you may know, you can't read in dreams, but I was able to read this perfectly, the name of the university, and then I was shown like this giant aquarium with all these strange Martian animals that were living in.
Traveling to one of the, more ethereal levels of Mars itself.
That's exactly what I told him.
Yeah. That's what I suspect it was, that it really was a true experience, because all the planets are populated at different levels. Mars, the master teachers, I think is in New World Atlas 1, they talked about when Mars was populated, this is probably some of its provenance of being labeled as warlike, as the warrior planet.
Yeah.
But they allege that at one time in its history that Mars really engaged in some pretty outrageous wars, and that they were so astute in their ability, their military action as warriors, that they were able to become spiritual warriors, and so they could enter other planes and step into other people's spiritual space, and then actually carry on types of attacks.
Hey, Lori, we're at the break, and we can continue on with Mars when we get back, and then press on. Lori, real quick, your website?
Oh, LoriToye.org, and LORITOYE.org, and you can get 4 free chapters of my book.
Great. All right, guys, we'll see you after we break.
Welcome back to the 100th Monkey Radio Show. Wonderful show. So, Toye, we were talking about Mars when before the break.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think what we're talking about is how planets have these other levels of consciousness,
right,
and are populated. One thing that's interesting in Sisters of the Flame about other planets is, I have to give you a little backstory, then I'll tell you the story about a Pleiadian time traveler that shows up in Sisters of the Flame. But during that time period in my life, I was learning how to do a lot of different trance techniques, and learning not only how to perfect what I was doing, but also just experimenting. Could I actually do a trance session, without having people there to ask questions? Could do that, didn't prefer that, didn't feel I got the depth of information that I wanted to. Sherry at the time, she said, well, Lori, I think you should, really work to have the master teachers just take your body completely over, in the same way like J.C. Knight does that technique. And I tried that a few times, and that wasn't for me either. So I just said, I'm just going to stick with what I know and what I'm doing, because it seems to work well for me. So as a result, a lot of different new teachers appeared that in this book that are very different than from the first book a teacher appears in Sisters of the Flame. And one teacher that came forward was from the Pleiades, and her name was Anaya. And she was pretty on target, saying that she felt like that the earth changes were imminent, but that we could soften the result of the changes quite a bit. And she said that cataclysmic earth changes may occur if we do not realize our spiritual path of life and the spiritual way of being. And then she said, all is spirit. And as we move through matter, we must honor and respect this in all that we do, all that we see, and all that we are. And so then she went on to explain that this was our challenge, is to understanding this indelible spirit world, that it coexists with our physical existence.
You know, I'm looking at some of the challenges that we face right now in the position that we're in an awakening world, where so many on this planet are just, they have their heads down and their blinders on, and are focusing on solely the third dimension. And then we have, on the other hand, we have those of us out here that are consciously pursuing a spiritual path and the awakening process for ourselves in this world that we find ourselves. And some of the challenges that we face doing that with those dynamics. And one of them that I have found probably most challenging, and I've seen others who have experienced this challenging aspect also, that there seems to be a struggle to have that expression that is supportive of the process, supportive of the growth, supportive of life, versus the old paradigm, or the third dimensional paradigm of supportive of me, you know, get to the top, you know, step on your brother's back to get to the top type mentality. And the all the lingo and the reactions and everything that goes along with that programming. And I hope I explained that well. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges that I've seen. And I'm just curious if there's anything within this book that addresses something along those lines.
It does. It talks about collective cooperation and how we're moving into unity through cooperation, which is one of our greatest challenges right now. And especially this is near to the earth, because they say, you know, it's again microcosm, macrocosm. But one of the chapters, I think, is called Collective Cooperation, and they talk about actually they teach by example. So often, you know, one master will come in and talk about one aspect or element of their work, and then another master will come in with the same topic and then talk about it in a different way, nuanced towards their knowledge, and both of these are equal. Both of them are truths. But this is how they work. They say that they are hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder. So there isn't one above the other, even though in classic Ascended Master teaching, you know, there's sort of this hierarchy, you know, and they talk about that. And I think more what they're trying to describe is that there are levels of growth that we go through. And I think that might be a more accurate way of really understanding it. But unity is really a major theme and the one in this book. Another thing that I think is really important that they shared in this is the feminine principle. And the feminine principle to them is associated with feeling, intuition, and the lower chakras of the body, which help hold the point of conception or creativity for us, and the womb of nurturing. And esoteric philosophy considers the mother created principle probably one of the highest expressions of being. And so this is the goddess. And I know that we just talked about Mars, but but this is the other side of it too. This is that feminine nurturing side, which is within all of us. Because through working with that, through love, this higher principle of love, we're able to evolve ourselves to this new level, to the heart. And I think the heart, back to where we started with this, is what holds the true collective cooperation. I think that any time that we make that choice to consciously cooperate with another that we might have contention with, it's a decision made from the heart, not from the head.
Ramon, you want to poke up the next one?
Yeah, it's funny that you brought in the feminine because in that state, that was the most important characters in the dream state / out of body experience that I had. With all the different things that people are happening, one of the things I've noticed is when people start to awaken and they start asking questions, of course, first people they turn to is their friends, and I always see, like, because of Facebook, you get to see many of this where before you wouldn't, and it's always funny because they ask their friends first, so they get this bombardment of like to almost like go back to sleep. Don't ask those kind of questions.
I know, and it's so interesting. Even within the movement itself of awakening, if you're too positive, some people they say, "Well, you're asleep because you're not seeing what's really happening," and it's always such a razor's edge. I think once we begin this whole process of what I would call our ascension, the true realization of the God within. And there will always be people who will try to kind of drag you down. And I think our challenge is we need to stay very focused. The master teachers, it isn't in this book, but it's in I think it's probably either in Light of Awakening or Divine Destiny. They talk about this problem that we encounter so often in spiritual growth and development. And they say to see your growth like you're on the football field and you're engaged, you're playing, you're a player. You're not on the sideline. You're actively playing. And what they mean by that is that we are constantly in that experience. Constantly, we're not going to stand on the side and judge what we're doing. Instead, we're going to engage in the process and be wholly committed to that process.
Yeah, and we start to realize as we do progress on that trail that we start learning about personal responsibility and how we don't. It can't all be externalized. That we have to take deep looks at ourselves, right?
Yeah, and also they say, well, the big thing is use laughter when you look at self, because they say that it removes self-judgment. And I think that was in Sisters of the Flame, because at that point in my journey, I was doing just a lot of intense introspective look at myself, and I could just the teachers at that time that were surrounding me, they were lighthearted, they were loving, they used laughter all the time, and I think we forget that too. I think the other thing that I see so much, of course, in my own journey is that compassion goes a long way. It seems like just the minute that I think that I know everything, then karma happens and I figure out that I don't know too much. So compassion and mercy and self-forgiveness, I think, are all really important attributes. These are all the attributes that spiritual teachers call the violet flame.
Okay.
And you probably heard about that, from other guests on your show. But the violet flame is actually a form of bhakti yoga in Hinduism, and that is the use of compassion. But the interesting thing about the violet flame, and they talk about it a lot in Sisters of the Flame, and how to use it, to use it all the time to alchemize lower energy, to move into higher energy, and that is, through, I think, developing states of detachment. But the color violet on a light spectrum is always seen as sort of the seventh color, and it is the color that allows us to transconduct to the next octave or level of vibration. And so that the violet flame is actually a really wonderful practice, and has helped me a great deal in my self journey.
With all these new these well, I said new, but I suppose they're reemerging on the planet now. These concepts, these ideas, these philosophies, these insights that we're gaining and that are being taught. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of wisdom teachers that are incarnated on the planet right now. With all those happening, it leaves one some with the impression that wow, there must be a real sense of urgency on the planet right now for our future. I mean, is it important for the average Joe to be able to get this stuff, or is he just SOL?
Well, I think sometimes you can only do what you can do, but the way that I see it is always plant seeds. Always share information. It may not fall on fertile ground in that moment, but you never know. Later on, a couple of years from now, it may begin to sprout. So I think it's important to just always continue. Talking to an associate of mine last week, and we were just talking about the I'm America teaching. I've been at this now for over 20 years, and I said, yes, I've learned that the most important way to share this information is not by splashing. It's the drip method.
Yes.
One drip at a time. Just keep at it. Be persistent. And I think that is also sort of a metaphor for I think how the spiritual teachers see our growth here. And yes, I do think that we are at a tipping point, and we might even be beyond that tipping point in terms of the earth and climate change and global warming. But I still feel the consciousness can make a difference. Master K.H. always says, within your heart, it's a gentle revolution which can redirect the course of such events.
Yeah, I really like that. That's right in alignment with what I've seen for the changes coming. Is there's so many doom and gloomers out there, and people that are throwing out the worst possible situation. You have 10 options to choose from a possible outcome. They always pick the worst.
Yeah, always. And it's not to sugarcoat the prophecies either, because I think they're vital. And it's an important way for us to begin to relate to how we can be responsible, but responsibly sustainable and stewards of the earth. Not only stewards of the earth in terms of it as a physical earth, stewards of it economically, stewards of it for our children, stewards of it spiritually. But there is no doubt that the earth changes are a reflection of our mass collective consciousness. And interestingly, in Sisters of the Flame, the spiritual teachers, they assure us that the healing of our earth as humanity comes together is through unity and understanding the one. Again, that collective cooperation.
So all these the changes in everything that people have seen and looked at for the future. Some of it is not very pleasant to probably witness, but I also get a sense that it's not something that's set in stone. Are there things within what you put out here that you feel are set in stone, or is it all mutable from the collective consciousness on where it goes, the direction it takes?
The way I see it is that the overall trend is that we are going to have change. Whether that's going to be sea rise, global warming, the ice caps are melting. I think that those might be some things that are very difficult to change, because there's a lot of powers in force right now on this planet that it's a difficult thing to stop. And so there will be some changes that are just somewhat inevitable. But I do think that, again, it is up to us, that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. And we're the ones that can make a difference and make a great change in the world. I think that's part of our role right now at this time and place on Earth is to help the Earth and to help people make the transition through this great change.
Fantastic. In this new book, Sisters of the Flame, some of the masters that you worked with shared some techniques that they can use to apply in this world and help themselves with this process. Would you share some of those with us?
Well, of course, one that I love, and if you go to LoriToye.org and play the little video I have up there, is the Awakening Prayer. And it's a prayer that you can just state out loud to yourself, or a prayer that you can share in groups or just whenever, or use to meditate. And the Awakening Prayer actually helps to facilitate the awakening of more people at whatever level they are ready for. And it's a really fascinating prayer. It reminds me a lot of some of the work that Alice Bailey did, and when she was given the Great Invocation, that it seems like it's kind of a more contemporary version of a way for us to call upon help of these spiritual beings who guide and direct our world at this other level. They also talk, of course, I mentioned at the Violet Flame, they're big into decrees. I don't know how exposed you are to decrees, but they're usually the use of the I am, like a mantra, a Hindu mantra. And those are really wonderful. And the book is filled with numerous decrees for all different reasons. Things, for healing, for financial issues, whatever it is, relationship issues, whatever it is you may need. So those are some of the techniques. Of course, meditation. And in A Teacher Appears and Sisters of the Flame, they are great advocates of meditation. They say that for financial issues, that one of the best things to do is to just meditate. And whether if that takes, 2 weeks or 10 years, continue to meditate, to change your energy and the law of attraction around you. So there are a lot of different techniques that they do offer in the book that are really fascinating.
Ramon.
Yeah, with all the with the different techniques, there's so many different techniques. What do you think is the core one? The most important you can tell people?
I would say probably the Violet Flame. And the reason why I have a personal belief in it is just because I've worked with it now for nearly 30 years. It's been a central part of my life. And I really have come a long way with the use of the Violet Flame. The other one is I do work with what is known as the pillar of light, or the tube of protection, to put on your white light. That song, like to put your light on. Put your light on every day. And I think that's a really great thing, because it gives and aids a protection to any of the work that you do with the Violet Flame. And then last but not least, and I'm not sure if they talk about it in Sisters of the Flame, but it is in my other books, is what they call the blue flame. And the blue flame is like another layer of protection that is guided and directed through Archangel Michael. So those are kind of the three techniques that I'm a great advocate of, and they work very, very well for me. But everyone's different. One person might really enjoy meditation, whereas another one might really enjoy mantra, decree. Another person, they might just enjoy yoga. They need a more physical approach to prayer. So there's a lot of different ways for it to work.
All roads lead to Rome thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And we are definitely a whole mess of unique individuals on this planet, about 7 billion of us. It definitely is an interesting voyage, to say the least.
Oh, it really is here on planet Earth.
Yeah. So Lori, what have you got coming up? Or you just released this book, working on the third one?
Yes, I've just released this book. I've got 2 other titles in process. The Fields of Light, which is the 3rd book in this trilogy. I won't be releasing that for about a year and a half. I'm working on another one of the Golden City series, Sacred Energies, which talks about the energies of the Golden Cities. We haven't really talked too much about those yet. But the most exciting thing that I'm working on right now is I'm in the process of working on a new map. And this is a very interesting map. It is somewhat an Earth changes map, because it depicts the Earth way different than how we know it. But it is the map of the ancients. And it is a map of the Earth of what it looked like before the time period we are in now.
13,000 years ago or more, further back?
Well,
26?
Yeah, almost 60 million years ago.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah, it's a long time ago. And so it shows basically how the 7 rays of light and sound have been very formative in helping to structure not only the geophysical aspects of the Earth, but also different civilizations. So depicted on the map are the lands of Rama, the lands of Mu and Lemuria, the lands of Atlantis, Amaru, which is now America, and then of course how at one time South America and Africa were one continent. And they show that and depict that.
Have they shared with you whether any of these other civilizations that have been on the planet in the past, whether or not they have gone through the same or similar ascension process and been highly successful with it?
Absolutely. It's a continuous process. This is interesting. Lokas, L-O-K-A-S, means a dimension of consciousness in Hinduism. And so each planet is they'll vibrate at a different loka. And Earth is known as Bhur Loka, B-H-U-R Loka, which means we're not the highest, we're not the lowest, we're right in the middle. And so we come here and have experiences, and then a whole group of souls ascend or graduate and then move on. They go to a different planet, or they might go to a higher level of this Earth, or they continue in their own spiritual growth and evolution. I do think we do transmigrate. That is, we move between dimensions, and we might have different types of bodies, that we might go into other planets where we have other, experiences, either in physical or ethereal bodies. But yes, and the Earth has gone through changes many, many, many times.
So for
the whole process,
right? For those on the planet that don't make the grade or don't graduate, would you suspect, or is the field wide open for them also? You think they have?
I think so. Of course, that's a great question, by the way. That'd be a good one for the master teachers. My sense is that many of us will be leaving the Earth in the next 10,000 years. There's this little sliver of time that's coming up where the energies from the galactic center are intensifying, and we will experience a mini golden age on Earth, and will allow a lot of us to ascend. That is, to move to a new level of spiritual expression. And I think that those who don't, they'll stay and continue to learn. And I think that there'll be new incoming souls who will come in and help raise the vibration of the Earth. So there's still a lot of what ifs.
Right.
And how it works and how it moves along. But I think in the big picture, yes, I think that there'll be some who will stay and some who will go.
Fantastic. Okay, 30 seconds, Lori. Would you share your website again? And
yes.
Yeah.
I will. And if they go to loritoye.org, LORITOYE.org, you can download 4 free chapters of Sisters of the Flame. And the good thing about this is that you get one more chapter than you would if you just go to Amazon.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and for all you listeners out there, hang around. We've got George Cavazos.
Thank you very much.